on grounds of caste, faith, religion, may yet have some ecosystem within their communities, because a child born in a Dalit family is clearly born to parents who, at least the father who's Dalit. A child born in a family that's a religious minority, be they Muslims or Christians, will be born to parents and at least fathers who are Muslim or Christian. There is a certain cohesion, there is a certain support that the family exerts as an ecosystem. But transgender persons are not necessarily born to transgender parents. Our parents are not transgender. So even without इसके ये COVID-19 और कोरोना वायरस आने से पहले भी समाज की जो भेदभाव और समाज में जो हिंसात्मक जो धारणा है ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों के खिलाफ, वो एक तरह का लॉकडाउन ही है ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों के लिए। तो एक हद तक लॉकडाउन हमारे लिए कुछ नया, this is not something that's entirely new for us. Although the current lockdown is something that is that's worldwide, and it's operating from a different orbit altogether. It's worldwide, and it's not just a pandemic, but it has literally decimated and erased livelihoods of many. Unlike many other working class persons, transgender persons and communities are heavily and majorly dependent on just 2 to 3 sources of livelihood, namely begging and sex work. That apart, they also earn some livelihood through offering benedictions when babies are born, or when there are weddings and betrothals or engagement ceremonies and so on. But such auspicious or festive occasions do not happen on a daily or a weekly basis. So that's not really a steady daily source of income. The daily sources of income for transgender persons, pushed as we are to the fringes and margins of society, are begging and sex work. And these are not things that have been offered to transgender persons on a platter, but have been constructed out of the vacuum and void that exists because of the rejection and stigma in society. When a child is born intersex, there's already a lot of pressure on mothers to deliver boy babies. There's enormous pressure to deliver male babies. And when a mother delivers a girl baby, a female baby, she comes under a lot of pressure. We know how women are looked down upon, excluded, or even necked out of their homes when they deliver female children. Now, if a mother were to deliver an intersex infant, an intersex baby, who cannot be clearly labeled as either male or female, the kind of discrimination, exclusion, and stigma that the parents, and particularly the mother, and most importantly the child, is bound to suffer is phenomenal, is enormous. Such intersex babies have often been abandoned by their own parents. Parents and mothers, helpless mothers and parents conditioned by society, who've left their children at the threshold of either a temple or a mosque or a church, or much worse, left them at a dustbin or left them in the hospital, traded them off to fraudulent healthcare workers who sell those babies, or just hand them over to hijra people in hijra communes. So this discrimination, exclusion, and stigma is quite historic. Now, as the talk focuses on the deleterious effects and the disastrous effects of the pandemic on transgender persons who, as I said, been largely dependent on begging and sex work, now have their historic sources of livelihood decimated and erased. As we all know, there are no bazaars, no marketplaces, no commercial activity other than essential services. There are no malls, there are no trains flying. A lot of transgender people seek alms, beg in trains. A lot of transgender persons seek alms and beg at traffic signals and so on. Even before the lockdown was imposed, there were a lot of flyers and posters pasted all across the city of Hyderabad, and we do not know who stuck them up. The posters were for computer printouts that sternly warned the citizenry of transgender people. The posters said that transgender persons and the LGBT community are the ones who were majorly affected by HIV and AIDS, and now they will be the carriers and super spreaders of coronaviruses and COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. So this kind of misinformation, disinformation was peddled, soft peddled, hard peddled at bus stops, at traffic signals, at railway stations, with these flyers and posters stuck up at bus stops, bus terminuses, railway stations, and so on. Some transgender people even went and gave complaints at their respective police stations, but we are not aware of any action taken. There was no FIR filed. There was no FIR copy handed over. That apart, many transgender persons have not one, but 2 or 3 names or more names. We transgender persons face a condition called gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, by virtue of which the transgender person may not necessarily identify with the gender and name assigned to that person at birth. Please bear in mind that gender primarily has almost always been assigned at birth. A baby does not know their sex. That child, that baby, that infant is told since birth, since childhood, that that baby is a boy or that baby is a girl, based on the genitalia, based on the anatomy and the physiology. We live in cultures and societies that almost always equate gender with biological sex, although these are 2 different things. Gender is inherently how a person wishes to identify himself or herself or themselves, and how that person wishes the society to identify him, her, or them. While biological sex is is a combination of their genetic characteristics, their bodies, their anatomy, their physiology, and so on. And these 2 are very different things. But because there is this conflation, avoidable conflation of both biological sex and gender, these 2 terms are almost always used interchangeably and synonymously. Be they application forms at schools and colleges and educational institutions and universities, or books of English grammar, sex and gender have almost always been interchangeably and synonymously used. So much so, many people seem to think that these both of them are the same, which they are not, as I said earlier. As much as there have been communal overtones and undercurrents, communal undertones and overtones given to the spread of the pandemic, which is avoidable, both the spread of the pandemic as well as those communal overtones are totally avoidable. Similarly, I wouldn't say it's identical, but in similar ways, people who have little or no awareness on gender, and more so on the diversity of gender identity and expression, have chosen to peddle this kind of misinformation that transgender people are super spreaders of coronaviruses. As the discrimination and exclusion of transgender persons begins at a very early age, since childhood, as our parents have no clue of what we go through. And as our parents are also heavily conditioned by the society, they often live in this myth that that we as their children need to be disciplined to fall in line with the societal patriarchal postulates and paradigms of patriarchy, heteronormativity, cisnormativity, and masculinity. So much so, almost always, transgender persons and gender non-conforming children in their very childhood are either necked out of their homes. उनके हमारे खुद के वालिद वालिदा हमें समझ नहीं पाते, हमारे माता पिता हमें समझ नहीं पाते, उनकी सहायता करने के लिए कोई नहीं है, हमारी सहायता करने के लिए, मतलब हमारी, I'm not just talking about myself, but it is quite a phenomenon within most transgender, in the lives of most transgender persons. When the stigma begins at home, and when misinformation presents itself as information, when pseudoscience masquerades as science and passes off as science in the garb of social conditioning, faith, it could be religion, any religion, it's not specific to any one religion, and many other forms of social exclusions, parents have no source of information. The family, which is supposed to be a space of support, itself becomes an institutionalized unit of violence, stigma, discrimination, and exclusion. Siblings are more often than not happy to get rid of their transgender and gender non-conforming siblings, because it would mean that if one sibling is necked out and excommunicated, excluded from the family, the other sibling could get a higher pie in the parental property. So siblings have almost always, and I wouldn't say always, but definitely almost always, played an extremely adverse role in the exclusion of their own transgender siblings. And parents have no other sources of support. So most of our people who've been excluded from their own families have lost touch. They have been necked out of their homes, thrown out of their homes, or unable to bear the domestic violence. They have themselves ran out of their homes. So it's been 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years of transgender people not having been in touch with their own natal families. And in such an event, when people are thrown out of their homes or they run away from their homes at a very early age, at 12, at 14, at 10, at 16, education gets affected. So our people, many of them do not have government ID proofs, or even if they do have government ID proofs, those government ID proofs are in their natal homes, parental homes, and they are not in touch with their parents because they've been necked out of their homes by either their own parents or siblings, most often siblings. So it's just so not possible. It's so difficult for transgender people to have government ID proofs. The very first law that acknowledged the sheer existence of transgender persons was as recent as in 2014. That was a historic and a watershed judgment of the Supreme Court of India, which was Nalsa versus Union of India, which was more popularly known as the Nalsa judgment. This judgment was delivered on 15th April 2014, about a little more than 6 years ago. And this was a judgment delivered by Justice Radhakrishnan and Justice Sikri. And very shortly, if I were to explain and share the gist, the summary of this judgment, the Supreme Court bench held that and I'm quoting out of the summary, the rights of transgender persons to self-identify their gender is upheld. I repeat, the rights of transgender persons to self-identify their gender is upheld, and the central and state governments are thus directed to recognize their self-identified gender. The court also said that any insistence on sex reassignment surgery or medical procedures illegal. So mandated that all gender persons, both in public education and public employment. This judgment was the first baby step in the right direction. It had its own flaws and inadequacies, nevertheless, but it nevertheless was a step in the right direction. While 6 years have passed, its implementation has mostly been observed in breach. Its implementation has mostly been observed in breach than in compliance. To make things worse, the government of India came up with a very monstrous, tends to dilute a few good steps, the first few baby steps that the Supreme Court took. And that's a different challenge altogether, but I'm just sharing all this with you so as to give a historic perspective. Now, all this said and done, lockdowns are not entirely new to transgender person, because even without this kind of a lockdown, most transgender persons pushed to the fringes and margins of society, pushed out of the society, have almost always suffered social ostracism, which in many other ways is comparable to a lockdown. Now, coming to where we are today, something that baffles many of us, transgender persons and beyond, is why the government of India did not seal its borders well in time. The government of India could not have foreseen this, used its vast resources to just seal the borders and seal international trade, and not have caused this avoidable lockdown and that has imperiled the lives and livelihoods of many, and not just transgender persons. We are all aware of how lakhs of migrant laborers walked back to their villages across states, crossing interstate borders, and many who died on the way. While all of those visuals, I must admit, only reminded many of us of some old footage out of partition of India and Pakistan. It was as horrible as that. It was so reminiscent of that. So it totally baffles us as transgender persons as well as to why the government of India could not have been smarter in February, instead of hosting an event with somebody who called all of this a democratic a scam of his opponents, of the Democrats in the US. And these were the exact words. I mean, if not the exact words, these were the messages that the US president was trying to convey. And we were very, very busy hosting somebody who was rubbishing this pandemic at that point of time. It baffles us as trans. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, there was some problem. Yeah, if you could be slightly closer. Yeah.
So it baffles us as transgender persons. Apart from those meaningless posters that were just trying to peddle a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and fear mongering among within society on transgender people as carriers of HIV and AIDS, and as super spreaders of coronaviruses, which, if not identical, it's not exactly identical to what certain religious minorities, and particularly Muslims, have faced. It's not identical to that, but it's very similar. It's very similar. It's not happened at that scale, but this was limited to Hyderabad. And such things have not been very new to the transgender community, because very often we've been soft as well as hard targets. And from this, while some activists gave police complaints, and no sooner than the police complaints were given, the lockdown began, and people couldn't really follow up on FIR or registrations of FIRs. People gave complaints. There were no FIRs registered, or perhaps they were registered, but they were not communicated to. So nobody had a clue of what action was taken. And as I said, most transgender persons do not have government ID proofs. the bulk, the majority of transgender persons do not have government ID proofs. So is the predicament of many migrant interstate laborers. That does not mean that transgender persons are any less affected. They are as much affected or even worse, because transgender persons have mostly been unemployed, and we do not have major savings to fall back on. The average transgender person is typically that person who begs on the train, seeks arms on the trains at traffic signals, and gets all dolled up at night to do sex work, all dolled up on at night under some dark flyover or at a dark alley on the road to do sex work. So bulk of the transgender community has no savings. They are living by the day. And when there's a lockdown as this, when they're unable to earn or fend for themselves, most of the daily wage earners and transgender persons, the working class communities and peoples, will be the first to get affected and will be worst affected. We must also bear in mind that this pandemic is not because of the working class. And please feel free to disagree. But these were clearly a bunch of very privileged people who traveled at the whim of their thoughts, who hobnobbed and globe-trotted, jet-setted and globe-trotted at their own whims, who partied at their own whims, who disco and pub-hopped at their own whims across continents, who did their high-profile business meetings across continents, and who traveled across continents sans frontières, with no restrictions on borders, and literally imported and exported the coronaviruses and the pandemic. So while the creme de la creme of the society, to my mind, they have been the super spreaders. Now, those of them who traveled across continents, who partied across continents, who club hopped and pub hopped across continents, and who held their high profile business meetings, those, to my mind, and feel free to disagree or agree, to my mind, those were the people who exported and imported the pandemic. And while they have been the super spreaders, the brunt of the pandemic is borne by the bottom of the pyramid, the working class people and the daily wage earners, and the structurally excluded, unemployed transgender persons not excluded. And as virtue of not having many government any government ID proof, transgender persons are also by default excluded out of many welfare schemes. For instance, in Telangana, there's an ASRA scheme, which is meant for single women, widows, senior citizens, and so on, and many other marginalized, disenfranchised communities, acid attack survivors, and so on. But the ASRA welfare scheme was never extended to transgender persons. Not that it's a lot of money, but it was something. Arogyasri, which is a health insurance, has been structurally designed only for men and women. Does that mean that transgender people never fall sick? Does that mean that transgender people have no right to access healthcare? Now, Telangana is one of those states which has rejected Ayushman Bharat. That's not to say that Prime Minister Modi's Ayushman Bharat is the best scheme in India. And I'm not trying to, extol it at all. But the fact that our Chief Minister KCR said no to it, he should have, it was incumbent on him to ensure that Arogyasri was that robust as to include almost everyone and everyone at the bottom of the pyramid. But while he excluded Ayushman Bharat, I'm not sure if he put his mind to application as much as to deep dive and check whether Arogyasri included the most marginalized, disenfranchised sections of our communities. Transgender people definitely need access to Arogyasri. Apart from ASRA pensions and Arogyasri, transgender persons, many of us do not have ration cards, because our ration cards that were made are with our natal families, with our biological families, and we've been thrown out of our biological families long ago. So, and the Supreme Court judgment, that's Nalsa versus the Union of India, was delivered just 6 years ago. Out of the 29 states and 7 union territories, only 6 or 7 states formulated a comprehensive transgender policy. They issued GOs, government orders, and had systems in place. Out of the 29 states, if you were to look at 22 to 23 states out of the 29 states and 7 union territories have been non-starters. They have not done any work. In Telangana, while some of us, my friend Mona Lisa and I, and another gender non-conforming, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming person, we challenged an archaic law called the Telangana Eunuchs Act, and we got it scrapped. We also challenged the fact that the Nalsa judgment has not been implemented in Telangana, despite almost 4.5 years of its passage. As of 2018, November, it was almost 4.5 years of the passage of the Nalsa judgment of the Supreme Court. It was delivered in April 2014. So we moved a PIL in November 2018. At that point of time, the state government of Telangana was, there were elections around the corner. So they, तारीख पे तारीख, अब ये चुनाव हो रहे हैं, वो बहाना था उनका। और 4-5 महीनों में केंद्र सरकार, लोकसभा के चुनाव आ गए, तो उन्होंने फिर से कहा कि अब लोकसभा के चुनाव हो रहे हैं, अब थोड़ा और टाइम दीजिए, 6 हफ्ते, 8 हफ्ते, तारीख पे तारीख। उतने में उन लोगों ने कश्मीर में 370 हटा दिया और अलग अलग मुहिम छेड़ गए, और वो होते ही उन्होंने और भी कर दिया। मतलब केंद्र सरकार ने CAA पालित कर दिया। CAA के बाद और ये असम में जो हुआ NRC जो हुआ, उसमें जो खोदा पहाड़ तो निकला। उनका दावा था कि 1 करोड़ 25 लाख अवैध घुसपैठी हैं, उन्होंने कहा, पर उनके लिस्ट के मुताबिक 19 लाख खोदा पहाड़ तो निकला चूहा, और उस 19 लाख में कुछ 12 लाख हिंदू और शायद 6 या 7 लाख मुसलमान थे, और उस 19 लाख में तकरीबन हजारों 25-26 हजार ट्रांसजेंडर लोग थे। और वो हमारी गलती नहीं है, क्योंकि जैसे हमने पहले कहा, जब एक इंटरसेक्स बच्चा पैदा होता है तो माँ बाप उसे अपनाते नहीं, माँ बाप उसे अस्पताल में छोड़ देते हैं या बेच देते हैं या हिजरा लोगों को के हवाले दे देते हैं या किसी मंदिर मस्जिद या गिरजाघर के चौखट पे छोड़ देते हैं। अब जिस बच्चे को खुद नहीं पता कि उसके माँ बाप कौन है, वो NRC या में कैसे क्लियर हो सकता है? उनके पास तो अपने वालिद वालिदा या माँ बाप के दस्तावेज हैं ही नहीं, उन्हें खुद नहीं पता, और वो उनकी गलती नहीं है। तो बहुत से हजारों ट्रांसजेंडर लोग बेदखल हो गए, मतलब NRC में आए नहीं, फाइनल लिस्ट में नहीं आए। तो ये सब इस माहौल में कोई भी कल्याणकारी योजना, वेलफेयर स्कीम हमारे लिए ना केंद्र सरकार ने किया ना राज्य सरकार ने किया। और इस वक्त ऐसे मौके में जब ये कोरोना वायरस की वजह से लोग भुखमरी और गरीबी से तड़प रहे हैं, यहाँ के सरकारी जो मुख्य सचिव हैं, चीफ सेक्रेटरी, वो कहते हैं आप नाइट शेल्टर्स में चले जाइए। अरे भाई, नाइट शेल्टर्स एक टाइम बॉम्ब के बराबर हैं। नाइट शेल्टर्स में कैसे फिजिकल, शेल्टर होम्स में फिजिकल डिस्टेंसिंग, आपने देखा वीडियोस में, दिल्ली के जो शेल्टर होम्स हैं वहां कहाँ है फिजिकल डिस्टेंसिंग? और हम जैसे ट्रांसजेंडर लोग अगर ये शेल्टर होम्स में जाए तो हमारी ऐसी की तैसी हो जाएगी। मतलब ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों को कभी भीख मांगने पे या सेक्स वर्क करने पे जब अरेस्ट करते हैं, हमारे लिए जेल्स नहीं है, तो हमें मर्दों के जेल्स में भेज लेते हैं। मर्दों के जेल्स में जब ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों को भेजा जाता है तो वहां बहुत सारा सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट होता है। और शेल्टर होम्स में, नाइट शेल्टर्स में अगर ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों को भेजा जाए तो वहां तो जरूर सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट होने के बहुत आसार है। तो हम सभी लोग जो है नाइट शेल्टर्स के बिल्कुल खिलाफ थे और हैं। तो हमें लगा कि इस चीज पे सरकार को ही जिम्मेवार करवाना जरूरी है। वैसे तो स्वयंसेवी संस्थाओं ने, कुछ स्वयंसेवी संस्थाओं ने और कुछ ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों ने क्राउड सोर्सिंग किया। अब हमारी तादाद और हमारी जो पॉपुलेशन है वो हजारों में है, और वो तो it's very underquoted, and according to that 500,000 transgender people exist. That's almost 5 lakhs. And informal surveys and the Telangana household survey revealed that there are almost, and the Telangana household survey was done in that there are almost 60. Now, in court, the Advocate General and the Standing Council argue that they have disbursed and distributed ration kits to almost 3,000 or 3,500 transgender persons. The Chief Justice was keen to know, because the Chief Justice was keen to know, the bench was keen to know what the denominator was, what the overall figure of transgender persons was. And neither the Standing Council nor the Advocate General's lawyers were able to answer that. So वैसे तो ये 3,000 लोगों को आपने राशन किट्स दिया या 3,500 लोगों को दिया, अच्छा किया, ये बुरा काम नहीं है. पर जब आप, if you look at the overall population, 3,000 or 3,500 is not even 10% of 60,000. It's perhaps just 6 or 7%. So what about the rest of the 93% of transgender persons? And as I said, many transgender persons are dependent on the traditional sources of transgender livelihood, namely begging and sex work. And in this lockdown, इस lockdown के दरमियान बहुत से ट्रांसजेंडर लोग जो है रेड जोन्स में फंसे हैं. सूर्यापेट एक रेड जोन है, वेमुलावाड़ा, करीमनगर रेड जोन है, अलग अलग डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में रेड जोन्स है. और HIV पॉजिटिव ट्रांसजेंडर लोग हैं जो सरकारी अस्पतालों में वो रजिस्टर नहीं हुए हैं. मतलब कुछ बहुत से लोग रजिस्टर हुए हैं, कुछ लोग रजिस्टर नहीं हैं. वो प्राइवेट हेल्थ केयर से अपनी दवाइयां ले रहे हैं. Some of them, not many transgender people are employed. Some of them are doing some very, very basic jobs, like working at a mall, like working at a multiplex, like working at a restaurant or a hotel. Now we know that these jobs of working at a mall or working at a restaurant, they don't pay anything beyond 15 or 20,000 rupees at the most. Now, such people who are employed at these places, while they are employed, they are not being paid their full wages. While the government, both the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, and the Government of Telangana has issued GOs that people not be retrenched, they not be sacked, that salaries be paid, they not be withheld. KTR has given bites. KT Rama Rao, Chief Minister साहब के साहबजादे, उन्होंने बयान दिया कि आप उन्हें निष्कासित मत करो और उनकी पगार मत रोको, पर आप चाहे, मतलब अगर आपको दिक्कत हो तो आप उनकी पगार कम करो, घटाओ. कितनी हद तक घटाओ, इसके बारे में उन्होंने कुछ नहीं कहा. उसके बारे में कोई जियो नहीं है. तो 20,000 के तनखे वाले लोग जो ट्रांसजेंडर हैं या MSM हैं, LGBT कम्युनिटी के जो लोग हैं, 20,000, 15,000 के जो तनखे वाले लोग हैं, वो मतलब namesake, just for the sake of being employed, they have been retained in employment, but 90% of their pay has been cut. Instead of being paid 20,000 or a little less, they have 90% of their pay has been cut, or 95% has been cut, and they're just being paid 1,000 or 1,500 rupees. And these are HIV positive people. They are unable to afford their HIV medicine. They are not registered at government hospitals. आपको तो पता है सरकारी अस्पतालों के अब फिलहाल ना कोई स्पेशलिस्ट, सभी स्पेशलिस्ट इसी ड्यूटी में लगे हैं. टेस्ट करो, कोमिंग ऑपरेशंस करो, क्वारंटीन सेंटर्स मैन करो, आइसोलेशन सेंटर्स मैनेज करो. नेफ्रोलॉजिस्ट्स, endocrinologists, urologists, cardiologists, gynecologists, everybody, almost everybody in the government Medicare space, in the public sector, have been diverted to COVID-19 management. HIV is a virus, COVID-19 is also a virus. Now, while the treatment of COVID-19 has not been firmly established, and there is a lot of research going on, because both are viruses, a lot of anti-HIV medicines are also being experimented with for COVID-19. So right now, many ART medicines are not available in the open market. So ऐसे बहुत से लोग हैं जो कह रहे हैं पैसे आप मत भेजो, क्योंकि अगर आप पैसे भी भेजो तो हम खरीद नहीं पाएंगे, because there are GOs, there are circulars issued that have banned the sale of these medicines across the counter. Pharmacies don't have stock. Pharma distributors are not selling it. So how do you expect people? There are people who've not taken HIV medicine for 2 to 3 weeks, and if the immunity, agar unki immunity घट जाए और वो already Z zones में हैं, वो कुछ लोग हमें फोन पे, व्हाट्सएप पे वॉइस नोट्स भेजे हैं, वॉइस फाइल्स उन्होंने भेजे, फोन कॉल करके, वीडियो कॉल करके रो रहे हैं कि दीदी हम 2 हफ्ते से 3 हफ्ते से हमारा ART रुक गया, पैसे नहीं है, कुछ लोगों के पास पैसे हैं पर दवाई नहीं मिल रहे हैं, ये दवाई आप सरकार ने बैन कर दिया और कोविड-19 पर डाइवर्ट किया। तो जब दवाई नहीं है और आप रेड जोन में हैं, आपके घर के 10 कदम आगे या 20 कदम या 100 कदम आगे कुछ 15 या 20 या 50 लोगों को कोरोना वायरस आ गया है, आपकी इम्यूनिटी घट रही है रोज दिन ब दिन, तो आप कितने और दिन जिंदा रह पाओगे? हाँ, ऐसी खतरनाक हालातों से बहुत सारे ट्रांसजेंडर और LGBT कम्युनिटी के लोग गुजर रहे हैं। तो इस खतरनाक माहौल में बहुत जरूरी था, it's very important and that the government be made accountable to provide for not just food and rations and dry rations and vegetables, but micronutrients and nutritious food for transgender persons. I think everybody, it's just not about transgender persons, but everybody needs access to food, and food security is already a legislation. It's a law enacted by Parliament. That apart, access to Medicare, access to medicines. It's not somebody's fault that they are HIV positive. Anybody can get HIV positive, and everybody needs access to Medicare. So it was very important at this juncture to have the state be more accountable. While NGOs could help, you know, it's not, we can't entirely make the NGOs entirely accountable to substitute the state. The state has to take the lead and partner, of course, with NGOs. And hence, I moved that PIL for safety, for protection from persecution, access to food and food security, and access to Medicare. With that, I think I'm done with my presentation, and I'll leave it open for questions. I have already shared with SQ Masood ji a copy of that judgment, which is just a one-page judgment, 1 or 2-page judgment. And if you'd like, you can show the judgment on the screen for the quick reference of the people on this call.
Thank you so much. It is really very informative, and in fact, several issues which you have shared, I mean, was not in our mind. Much in normal life, we are talking about how transgender community or LGBTQ faces, but then the way you could bring out, you know, nuances in the context of legal issues, identity card, shelter houses, and issues of health and Medicare. I think we have a couple of questions in that context, and that will be more interesting that if you can highlight. There are
sure.
There's one question which asks about Tabrez is asking that how do you see the role of non-government organizations in the context of LGBTQ, and what could be done at the micro level? Yeah, if you can briefly respond to that, then I'll put the other one.
Right. So I think NGOs have a significant role to play. NGOs as well as community-based organizations. I think transgender persons themselves should form NGOs and should partner with many other NGOs, because the axis of oppression tends to operate and victimize various communities through various forms of social exclusion, be it faith, be it through the prism of faith, or that manifests as religious minorities, or persons with disabilities, or women, or gender and sexuality. NGOs have a role to play to collaborate so that we expand human rights and partake, be partners in progress to realize the constitutional mandate, to realize the constitutional protections. For instance, I'll give you an example. Disability jurisprudence, disability rights, disability jurisprudence in law. There is a principle of reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation, ये जो सिद्धांत है कानून में, ये डिसेबिलिटी कानून से आता है, और रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन को हम ट्रांसजेंडर लोग, हमारे लिए एक क्या कहें, एक वरदान जैसा है. And across movements, they could enormously out of the women's rights movement, be it prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, or the many laws that protect women from sexual assault, sexual aggression, sexual harassment, or the disability rights movement, or the anti-caste movement. Now, if you look at, we already have a template in the Prevention of Atrocities Act, the Civil Liberties Act of 1955, and the Prevention of Atrocities Act, the manual prevention, prohibition of Devadasis, the system of Devadasis, the legislations that were enacted, and that apart, yes, the prohibition of manual scavenging, the eradication of manual scavenging. All these laws deal with annihilation of caste. And these laws already offer us a template. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we need to work closely together, figure out horizontals across movements. If I were to envision each of these movements, that fight against communalism, that fight against casteism, that fight against gender inequality, that fight against gender binary impositions. If these are verticals, there are horizontals that cut across, and we have to figure out these horizontals to ensure that we don't reinvent the wheel, and we learn out of each other's movements. The examples that I've already given you are the progress made in the women's rights movement, the anti-caste movement, and the disability jurisprudence, the principle of reasonable accommodation. Did I miss the question? What else? What was the other part of his question?
No,
NGOs, yes, NGOs. So I think NGOs have a significant role to play. Again, I've personally noticed that NGOs that work very closely with the government are unable to challenge the government, because either their funds come from the government, they need to be in the good books of the government, and so on. So I think NGOs should also partner with civil, with the activists who are not involved with NGOs, freelancing activists, RTI activists. Somebody else who's able to challenge the government should be able to take the burden of the NGO so as to be able to challenge the government. So it's so that the work gets done. Ultimately, it's not about, what is important is that benefits reach to the bottom of the pyramid. I'm not here, I firmly believe that I'm not here to further somebody else's comfort with the government or somebody else's career with the government. Activists are meant to ensure, the primary responsibility is to ensure that people at the bottom of the pyramid, working class people, people below poverty line, disenfranchised, marginalized, vulnerable communities, they could be women, they could be religious minorities, they could be persons with disabilities, they could be acid attack survivors, they could be survivors of sexual assault, they could be the LGBTIQ communities, transgender communities, and many other disenfranchised, marginalized communities get the benefit of law, are able to realize the constitutional mandate. So NGOs have a significant role to play. And where NGOs are unable to oppose the government, I think they should seek help from those who are unaffiliated with NGOs, who can challenge the government in court. And I also think that conflict is not the only way of doing it. I think we should also work with the government for starters. We should give governments ample chance to set their home in order, give representations, give at least 3 representations for starters, give ample opportunity to governments to set their home in order before we go and litigate.
2 quick question. One, that how do you see if the NRC or NPR is implemented? What kind of problems, various problems, you would envision when it is implemented for transgenders?
Yes. So that's a very vast topic, and it covers a lot of law, very broadly speaking, and Professor Faizan Mustafa's videos have thrown a lot of light on that, where he very clearly elucidates that it's not going to be the same as in Assam. The cutoff date there was some 1971, 24th or 25th March or something, while here it would be in the rest of India. Now depends on how as and when the NRC happens and how the Supreme Court mandates. But as of now, the cutoff date could be 26th of January 1950. So those who are born before 26th of January 1950 may have the least evidence, not that they have no evidence to show, but they have the least evidence to show relatively. Those born between 26th January 1950, that's the Republic Day when the Constitution came into existence, and there's another cutoff date in 1987 or so, I forgot the date, when that accord was made. That entire bracket of people have more evidence to show. And from 1987 to 2003 or 4, when the rules were changed, they have much more evidence to show. That is, they have to prove not just the father's citizenship, but also the mother's citizenship. And those are born after 2004 have a lot to show. So it's almost in ascending form of evidentiaries. It's a kind of an ascending order of evidentiary standard. But that is very broad. I can't, it's a longer discussion. And coming to transgender people, remember I told you that many intersex babies, when जब एक नवजात शिशु इंटरसेक्स पैदा होता है तो उनके माँ बाप ही उसे अपनाते नहीं, उसे छोड़ देते हैं बीच मझधार या एक मंदिर के चौखट या मस्जिद के चौखट या गिरजाघर के चौखट या कचरे के डब्बे में छोड़ देते हैं, या अस्पताल में उसे एक नर्स के हवाले दे देते हैं, या छोड़ के आ जाते हैं, भाग जाते हैं वहां से, या हिजरा लोगों के हवाले दे देते हैं। जब ऐसे प्रथाएं चलती रहेंगी या फिर ऐसी प्रथाएं चलती रहेंगी कि बच्चा अगर लड़के के शरीर में पैदा हो और वो लड़की की बर्ताव कर रहा हो, तो वो माँ बाप उसको समझते ही नहीं, उसे मारते हैं, पीटते हैं, उससे घर से, और उसके जैसे हमने पहले कहा, उसके भाई बहन को तो यही दिखता है कि अब इससे घर से बेदखल कर दिया जाए तो सारा जायदाद हमें मिल जाएगा, तो उसे बेदखल कर देते हैं। और उसे आप हिंदुओं में एक प्रथा है, जब कोई मर जाता है तो पिंडदान करते हैं। पिंडदान मतलब ये आदमी मर गया, अब ऋषि कपूर मर गए तो वो क्या है, वो एक चावल का एक निवाला बनाना लीफ पे रख के कौवे को खिलाने का, उसे पिंडदान कहते हैं। तो जब वो इंसान मर जाता है, वो क्रियाकर्म करने के वक्त 10वें दिन या 11वें दिन ये करते हैं। तो जब लोग जिंदा हैं, उनके हमारे खुद के माँ बाप ने हमारा पिंडदान किया, मतलब तुम हमारे लिए मर गए हो। और ये गांव में उन्होंने सबके सामने किया, इसका मतलब कि हमारा बच्चा मर चुका है, जिंदा है पर हमारे लिए मर चुका है। तब बच्चे कैसे वापस जा सकते हैं, और वो लोग अपनाएंगे नहीं। और बहुत अधिकतर माँ बाप भी मर जाते हैं, भाई बहन हैं, और भाई बहन को कोई दिलचस्प नहीं कि ये बोलने में कि ये हिजरा इंसान जो है कि हमारा भाई या हमारी बहन है। हाँ, तो वो तो दे आर वेरी हैप्पी टू डिसोन। तो ऐसे हालात में how will they prove their parentage and lineage? In Assam, thousands of transgender people have been excluded out of NRC for no fault of theirs, purely because they're transgender. And one of our transgender activist friends, who's a lawyer, she has challenged this in the Supreme Court, but that is just pending. So, the NRC can be very disastrous for transgender people. And I don't think it is just about transgender persons. There are many people who are worried about it. I don't think it's just transgender persons or Muslims. Ignorance has become bliss. Many people do not even know what is coming up their way. So much worse when ये pandemic हुआ, तो हमारे कुछ activists बहुत परेशान हो गए, transgender activists, and they tweeted to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. कि हमारा अब ये 22 तारीख मार्च 22 को ये लॉकडाउन शुरू हुआ था ना, तो 24 को उन लोगों ने ट्वीट किया, तो ये सामाजिक व्हाट इज इट, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ सोशल जस्टिस एंड एम्पावरमेंट, सामाजिक न्याय और सशक्तिकरण मंत्रालय के एक सचिव ने, सेक्रेटरी ने रिप्लाई किया ट्विटर पे कि हाँ, हम आप लोगों को एक 2 मंथ का अलाउंस 1500 रुपए देंगे, ये देंगे, वो देंगे। एक गूगल फॉर्म था, उस गूगल फॉर्म में उन लोगों को भरना है आपका पूरा नाम, आपके माँ बाप ने जो नाम रखा वो नाम, आप कहाँ पैदा हुए हो, प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ। अरे भाई, प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ से राशन का क्या वास्ता? इससे आप अपना एनपीआर का काम आधा करवाना चाहते हो ना। लोगों का डर और खौफ, अब जब लोग बहुत डरे हैं, you can imagine 24th 25th there was so much of uncertainty. Now we are a little used. I wouldn't say we've become perfect with the lockdown, and nobody is happy with the lockdown. People are, and we also know that lockdown is very important. It is very important. That's not to say that ye bahana hai ya ye, I'm not saying that. Lockdown is very important to ensure that we are all safe. But we are not, we are at a very precarious situation. And in the first 1 week, there was so much of uncertainty. Supermarkets, departmental stores, kirana stores were just getting emptied. मिनटों में खत्म हो रहे थे जो सामान थे, राशन थे। हाँ, तो वैसी हालात में ये ऐसा फॉर्म देते हैं जहां प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ, आधार कार्ड नंबर, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस नंबर, आधार कार्ड नंबर, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस नंबर, पैन कार्ड नंबर, पासपोर्ट नंबर, राशन कार्ड नंबर, वोटर आईडी कार्ड नंबर। अगर आप देखिए, आधार और पैन कार्ड ऑलरेडी लिंक्ड है, फोन पे लिंक्ड है, बैंक अकाउंट पे लिंक्ड है, पर वोटर आईडी तो लिंक नहीं हुआ ना सभी का। वोटर आईडी सभी का नहीं हुआ, कुछ लोगों का हुआ। पासपोर्ट सभी का नहीं हुआ, बिकॉज पासपोर्ट जब इशू होता है 10 साल के लिए इशू होता है। ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस जब इशू होता है 20 साल के लिए इशू होता है। सभी के ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस, सभी के पासपोर्ट, सभी के वोटर आईडी का तो कोई वैलिडिटी नहीं है, लाइफ लॉन्ग है ना वो। तो कुछ लोग अब ये ऐसा फॉर्म देते हो, इसमें सारा लिंकिंग हो जाए, ये क्या बात हुई? मतलब 2 महीनों के लिए आप थोड़ी बहुत, जैसे भूखे को या डूबने को तिनके का सहारा बस है, या आप हमें क्या समझ रहे हो? मतलब बलि का बकरा बनाना चाहते हो कि आप थोड़ा घास फूस खिला दोगे और बाद में गला काट दोगे। So NRC can be, now we have to be very clear about NRC, and it is very important that transgender persons and religious minorities, particularly communities that fear being adversely affected, they need to know their rights. Legal awareness is very important, so that they are aware of the law and not just go by what people say or go by just media reports. It is important for people to read the Citizenship Act. It is important for people to read the Census Act. It is important for people to read through the rules.
This is one very interesting question, that the question of, identity is very important. So transgenders would not have any associations because they are disowned by their family members, as you said. But do you think that caste is also apparently coming on and off in the life of transgenders when they are not in their family? But is there anything like caste as an institution which is somewhere playing any role in your own context?
Is your question about how caste operates within transgender communities?
Yeah.
Okay. So it does operate, but it's not the same as it operates in the so-called, it does operate. I discount the operation of caste, but what I would say is it operates mostly when the transgender community interacts with the society outside. It does operate within the trans communities, but not as much, because वो ब्राह्मण ट्रांसजेंडर इंसान हो या रेड्डी या कापू हो या सिंह हो या राजपूत हो या गुज्जर हो या कोई भी हो या दलित हो, अधिकतर लोग यही कहते हैं, क्या फायदा एक ऊंचे जात में या किसी जात में पैदा होके, क्या फायदा? हमारे लोगों ने ही हमें बेदखल कर दिया। हमारे लोग, दलित ट्रांसजेंडर लोगों ने भी कहा, जब हम अपना कास्ट सर्टिफिकेट लेने हमारे भाई या वालिद साहब के घर गए, तो हमारे भाई ने कहा, हमारे वालिद साहब ने कहा, क्यों, तुम्हें हमारी जात की क्या जरूरत है, लिख लो, हिजड़ा जात बोल के लिख लो। तो there is the caste does operate when we deal with the so-called quote-unquote mainstream society. It also does operate. I will tell you, when people are born into generational privilege, there are transgender persons who are PhDs, whose fathers are and mothers are PhDs, whose grandfathers are PhDs, and they also become PhDs. मिसाल के तौर पे, अगर ये हमारी कोई दुश्मनी नहीं है करीना कपूर या रणबीर कपूर से, अगर रणबीर कपूर एक उम्दा एक्टर बने और अगर वो अच्छे एक्टर हैं, भाई कौन सा नया तीर मार लिया? आपके पिताजी, आपके वालिद साहब जो हाल ही में गुजर गए, ऋषि कपूर जी एक्टर थे, आपके दादाजी एक्टर थे, राज कपूर साहब एक्टर थे, आपके परदादाजी पृथ्वीराज कपूर साहब भी एक्टर थे, उन्होंने भी एक्टिंग की, आपने भी एक्टिंग की, तो आपने कौन सा नया तीर मार लिया? तो वो जो जेनरेशनल प्रिविलेज है, जो ट्रांसजेंडर लोग ऊंचे जात के और क्लास प्रिविलेज से आते हैं, जो पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी पीएचडीज हों या आईआईटीज में पढ़े हों या हार्वर्ड में पढ़े हों, तो उनका कुछ एक्टिविस्ट बनना, कोई नया तीर नहीं मार लिया उन लोगों ने। लेकिन जब कोई दलित या पिछड़ा हुआ ट्रांसजेंडर इंसान जब आगे बढ़ता है, जब कोई ट्रांसजेंडर इंसान जो गरीब है, जब कोई ट्रांसजेंडर इंसान जो जो उसके बावजूद जो आगे बढ़ते हैं, वो बड़ी बात है। तो कास्ट और जातिवाद है हमारे यहाँ, पर इट्स नॉट एग्जैक्टली द सेम द वे इट ऑपरेट्स इन द मेनस्ट्रीम सोसाइटी, क्योंकि यहाँ लोग एक दूसरे को डायरेक्टली मैं ब्राह्मण हूं तुम दलित हो ऐसे तो नहीं बोलते, पर वो इनहेरेंट प्रिविलेजेस तो हैं, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ भी हार्वर्ड स्कॉलर्स हैं ट्रांसजेंडर लोग, हमारे यहाँ भी आईवी लीग इंस्टीट्यूशन वाले हैं। तो अगर कोई हार्वर्ड स्कॉलर है, जिनके पापा भी हार्वर्ड स्कॉलर या कोलंबिया के स्कॉलर थे, जिनके दादा पर नाना सभी थे, तो वो अब एक्टिविस्ट बने, तो अब वो क्या मतलब, क्या नया तीर मार लिया उन लोगों ने? हाँ, तो वो जेनरेशनल प्रिविलेज है। तो बट आई थिंक इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट दैट पीपल हु हैव दैट generational privilege make use of it to ensure that they work hard to bring people at behind, in the middle and at the back, particularly people at the back, to the middle and to the preferably to the front of the queue.
I'm clubbing a couple of questions together. One,
okay,
in a way that people are asking that, do you have any, what kind of efforts being taken care by transgenders itself, the organization which is working within the community during the COVID-19 crisis? And in addition to that, do you also have any special provisioning apart from the issues you have been raising, like tweeting to the minister or somebody? But is there any initiative in any state or even in Telangana by the state government to support specifically transgender community, because the livelihood is completely lost? So can you quickly throw light something on that?
So after the PIL, and even while the PIL was being the government of Telangana did reach out. Their submission in court was that they had already covered 3.5 transgender persons with dry rations and although medicines were not provided, with dry rations. Now, some transgender persons have accessed some schemes, some projects from other funding agencies and so on. They are mostly around HIV prevention, now that this judgment has come through, where the High Court mandates that Asra pensions be offered to transgender persons, it also mandates that Arogya Shri be extended to transgender persons. It further mandates that security be ensured for transgender persons against any kind of this kind of disinformation, misinformation campaign about transgender persons being super spreaders. I think this it's important now to implement that judgment so that more and more people get covered by these schemes. To answer your question, as of now, there is no major coverage. The welfare schemes have not been designed for transgender people, and the existing welfare schemes do not cover transgender people in Telangana. जैसे हमने आपको एक आधे घंटे के पहले कहा कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एक फैसला दिया था 6 साल पहले, और केंद्र सरकार, एनडीए सरकार ने उस फैसले को घटाते हुए, diluting that judgment, they got a very regressive law that was 2 steps or 10 steps behind. So that law has just been enacted, and rules are just getting framed. I think the rules should get finalized by a month or 2, and then there should be some policies. Ab wo law kaise bhi ho, ganda ho, we have already challenged the constitutionality of that law in the Supreme Court. I have challenged through my lawyers, and other transgender people too have challenged this constitutionality. We have to fight. Nobody is going to give rights on a platter कि आओ air conditioned environment में बैठो और आपको माला चढ़ाएंगे, आपकी हारती उतारेंगे, आपको आपके हक देंगे. ये सब नहीं होगा. हमको लड़ना, संघर्ष करना है. संघर्ष करके ही अपने हक हासिल करने होंगे. कभी कभी सरकार गधे को बाप बनाना पड़ता है ना, तो सरकार को भी मस्का लगाना पड़ेगा. कभी सरकार के साथ चलना पड़ेगा. कभी सरकार को अदालत कभी नहीं चलेगी. सिर्फ सरकार की चापलूसी नहीं चलेगी, सिर्फ सरकार से लड़ना भी वाजिब नहीं होगा. सब कुछ आजमाना, हर हथकंडा आजमाना होगा.
Absolutely, आपने सही कहा. That is very important, and the most marginalized have to make highest effort, the serious effort, and then this is how you have been doing. I think we have taken a lot of time of yours. It is time that we can close up, and I'm really, on the behalf of Democracy Dialogue, Laik, Masood, we all, give you a great applaud for coming here and sharing in the period of COVID-19. I'm personally informed a lot about the work you have been doing, and we look forward that we'll have more interactions on this, because I know the kind of works and concerns which is there needs a lot of time. At least 2-3 hours is required, and we have a lot of questions pending, but we'll be putting up these video. The video is also live on Facebook, and we'll be putting in our portal so the others can listen later, get connected with you in terms of interacting further. Thank you so much, Vajayanti, and look forward for future interactions. Thank you so much, and good night. Friends, thanks to all of you for joining this evening on the platform of Democracy Dialogue. Democracy Dialogue is very important public forum we have started at Hyderabad to bring in various issues of civil society, where democratically we can discuss on those issues. And at least we have one very important talk every week. Today, this week, we are lucky that we could have Vasanta Mogli here. We are also going to have tomorrow, that is 2nd May 2020, another talk by Sohail KK. He'll be talking on Islamophobia in India. Many of you must be aware that he is a very hardworking social activist, and there is an organization which is working against the hate crime, or a Quill Foundation based in Delhi. He is the director of the organization. So tomorrow afternoon around 3 o'clock, we'll have a webinar on the Islamophobia in India by KK Sohail. So I look forward for you. We'll be sending invitation tonight and early morning. Please join us tomorrow again. Thank you, everyone. And Vajayanti, thank you once again. Good night.
Thank you. Dhanyavad. Shukriya. Night.